Overconsumption is a burden. This is what Shauna Rapari said in her recent video about why we idealize declutters. I'll link that video in the description below, but when she said that, it really got me thinking. Overconsumption is a burden. That really resonated with me and has been something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I've been slowly changing my consumer habits over the past couple years, and this quote got me thinking about how overconsumption is a burden and what has been changing in my own personal mindset regarding consumption and overconsumption. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing 11 things that have changed the way I consume. And I want to give a disclaimer that I am far from perfect. I am not the most sustainable person out there, and I still like to consume. I like to shop, I like to buy things, I like to try new stuff. But I've been trying to make a conscious effort in the past couple years to be more responsible about how I consume. So the first thing that changed the way I consume is when I tried to recycle my makeup. I was trying to be responsible and dispose of my makeup in a way where it wouldn't just go to a landfill, and it made me realize how hard it is to actually recycle your makeup responsibly. I was specifically recycling some products from Ilia. So Ilia's recycling program is through another company. I went ahead and followed their instructions, and long story short, I kind of failed. It was really hard. So they want you to fully clean all of the makeup out of all the components. That is easier said than done. Recycling is a really complicated process, and items have to be fully clean before they're able to be recycled. Otherwise, most of your recycled items are probably still ending up in a landfill. So I tried my best to get these items as clean as possible and to not use a lot of water in the process. And it was so hard, especially for a lot of the lip products. It's really hard to get fully clean. So I worked for literally hours trying to get this makeup fully clean. And to be completely honest, I ended up giving up. I just couldn't get them fully clean, and it was taking me forever. And I had other stuff that I wanted to do with my day. But I got about half of it clean and was able to recycle half of the containers of these makeup products. And just throwing these items into your recycling and hoping that the trash man will pick it up and recycle it responsibly is just not how recycling works. You really have to check in your specific city what they take and how they take it, and every single city typically has different requirements. So you really have to do your research and make sure that what you're putting into the recycling can be recycled. And a lot of times you have to fully clean it. So that's why I decided to recycle it through this program. And I know that I think Ulta Beauty has a recycling program, and Sephora, I want to say, also recycles makeup. But I'm really curious whether they recycle their stuff responsibly or how much of it is still ultimately ending up in a landfill. It's really easy to throw old makeup in the trash when you want to declutter it, and then it's out of your space and out of your mind, and you never have to think about it again. But these products are lasting literally forever on Earth, if not in our lifetime. So having this whole experience of trying to responsibly recycle my makeup really shifted my mindset and made me more conscious about my consuming habits when it comes to makeup. The second thing that changed the way I consume is having a lot of my makeup expire and then having that makeup cause an eye infection. I am still dealing with this eye infection right now. Right now, I'm not even wearing my contacts, so I can't see, and I've been having to wear my glasses for the past couple months. And it is the beginning of summer, and I just want to wear my contacts and my sunglasses so badly. And I went to the optometrist for this and got antibiotic eye drops, so it is healing now, but my overconsumption of makeup and having way more than I can use before it expires is a burden. This is something I've really been learning as I've been doing Project Pan in the past few months. Just how much makeup I have, even though it's not a lot compared to a lot of people, it's way more than what I can realistically use before it expires. And now I'm having to deal with the consequences of that. Not only is it a burden to try to use up everything before they expire, and it honestly adds stress and mental clutter to my life, but it also has been causing physical ailments. And I just have to put this out there. It is not worth getting an eye infection from using expired makeup. So if you have an eye product that goes directly around the eyes and you think it might be expired, then just throw it away. Or don't throw it away, try to recycle it, but I would get rid of it because it is not worth it. And in the future, this is something that I'm trying to be better at, of not having more than what I can realistically consume. The third thing that has changed my consuming habits is living in a smaller space. I've lived in a smaller apartment for the past few years, and there is not a lot of storage here. My closet is really small, and I don't have a lot of dresser space. I don't have a lot of kitchen storage. I just don't have a lot of places to put stuff. And so I've had to be conscious about buying less, because if I don't have a place to put it, then I shouldn't be buying it. I think especially in America, we have huge homes, a ton of storage, extra bedrooms, an office space, huge walk-in closets. And so I think we have the tendency to hoard a lot of stuff. And we don't really think twice about buying something if we can afford it because we have the space to put it and kind of forget about it. But for me, living in a smaller apartment, if I buy a piece of clothing and I don't have space in my closet, then it either lives out in the open space and I'm reminded about it daily and how I probably shouldn't have bought this because I don't have space for it, or I have to get rid of something else that I already have. So this has made a huge impact in how I acquire clothing and how I curate my wardrobe. My wardrobe has to be really curated because of my limited space. But honestly, it's a relief to not have too much stuff. It makes finding things really easy. My space is a lot cleaner, and I only own things that I really love. It takes a lot of the decision fatigue out of getting dressed because I don't have a ton of stuff, but what I do have is more than enough. So definitely living in a smaller space makes me think twice before I buy something. The fourth thing that has changed the way I consume is trying to resell my clothing. In the past, I've definitely been guilty of sending bags and bags of stuff to Goodwill. I would just drop it off and forget about it, and that burden was gone. I didn't have to think about where my clothing was going or what was happening to it or how they might be disposing of it. That was Goodwill's problem. That wasn't my problem. I had already done the work of decluttering it and getting it out of my apartment. But the reality is that a lot of stuff that goes to Goodwill ends up in a landfill. Goodwill is overburdened by the amount of stuff that they receive, and most of it is honestly low quality trash. So it ends up in the trash. We might feel responsible by donating it and thinking that somebody who needs it will find it, but a lot of times that just is not the case. So in the past couple years, I've been trying to resell my clothing on Poshmark and Depop. Because then I know when somebody buys it from me that it is going to a home that sees value in my secondhand clothing. But also going through that experience of reselling my clothing has made me realize that having too much clothing to try to resell is a burden. Again, overconsumption is a burden. Reselling clothing responsibly is not an easy task, and it takes time. I have to clean and iron the clothes. I have to take pictures, often both on my body and off. Then I have to write a description and take all the measurements of the clothing and then list it. And by the time it's all said and done, I've put hours into trying to resell my clothing. The nice thing is I do get some money from reselling my clothing, and like I said, I know that it's going to a home that will appreciate it and use it, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So having that experience of reselling my clothing has made me think twice about buying clothes, because if I don't like it, then the responsibility is on me to try to resell it. And that responsibility is a burden. Next up is seeing how the quality and fit of clothing affects the longevity. I came of age in the time of Forever 21. I was in high school when Forever 21 was really big. They opened one in a town nearby, and it was huge. It literally filled an entire building that used to be a Mervyn's. Does anyone remember Mervyn's? RIP to Mervyn's. But this Forever 21 was huge. It was so big, and we would literally go there and spend hours shopping. I would comb every single rack. I would take literally a huge pile, probably dozens of stuff into the dressing room, and we would spend hours trying on clothes, only to find a handful that actually worked for us that we wanted to buy. So I grew up during the rise of fast fashion, and that's how I shopped for probably about 10 years of my life. And what I learned through that is fast fashion is poor quality, it doesn't fit well, and it doesn't last long. And usually it's really trendy, so you'll be sick of it in a couple years. I essentially got tired of buying clothing just for it to get a hole in it within a month. I was sick of the loose threads and the random holes and of things not fitting me well, and that's when I decided that it was worth taking the time to invest in more quality pieces. And I don't think quality pieces necessarily need to cost hundreds of dollars. I think there's a lot of ways to buy items on sale or find good deals through secondhand, but quality really makes a difference and will save you money long term. And also, if an item doesn't fit me correctly or I don't feel comfortable in it because of the cheap fabric or just how it fits, then I typically won't end up wearing that item. It'll just sit in my closet and take up space. And I already said that I don't have space for clothing that I don't wear. So all of this has made me a lot more picky about what I look for in clothing pieces and what I'm willing to invest in. Quality affects clothing in so many ways. It affects the fit, it affects how it lays on the body, the feeling of the fabric and how breathable that fabric is. Polyester is not breathable, and how strong the seams are and how long it'll last in general. I've had t-shirts that were really cheap, and I bought multiple in different colors because they were so cheap, and they got stretched out and wavy hems, and the seams were falling apart within a year. Versus other t-shirts where I invested a little bit more money for quality, those t-shirts look exactly the same as the day I bought them, and I've had them for over 5 years. And also quality affects the resale value. So if you're trying to responsibly declutter your clothing after you're done with it, then it pays to have higher quality, and that's going to prevent your old clothing from ending up in a landfill. So definitely quality matters when it comes to the longevity of clothing. Along these same lines, the next thing that's affected the way I consume is understanding how fast fashion impacts the environment. The fast fashion industry is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. And fast fashion isn't just Forever 21, it's Zara, it's Abercrombie, it's all of these brands that are constantly churning out new designs and not doing so ethically. I happened upon a documentary back in high school. I think it was from BBC. I'll try to find out what the name of it was. But it was a really good documentary series about fast fashion. They took a couple fashion influencers and sent them to India to work in the fast fashion industry. And they started them out working in a factory where the conditions were a lot better and a lot more ethical. And then from there, they worked their way down to sweatshops and then ultimately to the landfills where the clothing ends up. That documentary had a huge impact on my consuming habits. And this was probably back in 2010, so I'm curious how well that documentary aged. But for me at the time, it was really impactful. Not only is fast fashion an environmental issue, but it is a human rights issue. The people who make fast fashion are working in sweatshops for not even pennies, and often in dangerous conditions that also impact the local environment negatively. So when you buy fast fashion, you're supporting unethical working conditions and business practices. And again, I'm not perfect. I still buy fast fashion occasionally, but it's something I'm aware of and I'm trying to get better at. So the next thing that has changed the way I consume is understanding built-in obsolescence. So this means that manufacturers are building items to break. They don't want their items to last a long time, so that you have to go out and buy a replacement. This is a very real thing, and I feel like we often hear older people complaining about how items just aren't made the same as they were back in their day, and unfortunately, that is very true. A great example of this that I experienced recently was with my TV. We purchased a TV, and it was really affordable. It was one of the cheapest TVs, and it looked really nice. It was a really nice smart TV with a really user-friendly interface, and we really enjoyed using it until it broke. And it broke 2 years after we bought it, which for a brand new TV is completely unacceptable. And then what happens to that TV after it breaks? It ends up in a landfill. And we were thinking, well, it was so cheap, we can just go out and buy the same TV again because we really enjoyed the TV. It's unfortunate that it broke, but it's cheap, so we can just replace it. But then doing a little bit of research online, it seems like a lot of people had the same issue with this TV breaking. And the reason why is that the power board is not high quality. And I'm not a TV expert, so maybe I'm wrong on these things, but essentially the TV was not built to last. It was built with lower quality parts, which is why it was so affordable, but then also that makes it not last as long. And I personally don't want to go out and spend $300 every 2 years to buy a new TV. When we bought that TV, we saw it as an investment and we wanted it to last for at least 10 years. We're not trying to get the new technology all the time. We would have been happy with that TV for 10 plus years, but it broke after 2 years of using it normally. So we did not go back to that same brand, and we ended up buying another TV secondhand from Facebook Marketplace, which I highly recommend. Go look on Facebook Marketplace. There are so many good deals there if you need to buy something secondhand and more affordable. And then you're not contributing to items just going to a landfill. You're saving an item from a landfill and giving it a second life. And we've been so happy with our secondhand TV, and hopefully this one is better quality and will last longer. But a lot of times you get what you pay for. Not always, but typically items that are more expensive for a reason. And obviously there's always a markup if it's a name brand, but even with clothing and electronics, you are paying for quality. And so many products nowadays have built-in obsolescence. They want to promote the cycle of consuming. They want it to be a never-ending cycle of us buying stuff and throwing it away, and buying stuff and throwing it away. And then having to deal with trying to responsibly recycle these items after they stop working. So many of these items are ending up in landfills. All right, number 8 for what has changed the way I consume is not having a job. And it's easy to say that when you don't have money, it's easy to not buy stuff. But really, not having the extra money to buy whatever I want, whenever I want it, has really changed my relationship to money. Money equals time. And that has become painfully apparent to me as I don't have a job. And I think anyone who has struggled financially understands this. Money equals time spent with friends and family. Money equals time to go on a vacation and do your hobbies and do things that you enjoy in life. It means being able to rest and take time for yourself. So as I don't currently have an income, it has changed my relationship to money. For me, money means time to do what I love. And so that's really changed my consuming habits as well. Because now I see wanting to buy that $15 makeup product as me losing time. I'm trying to make something out of this YouTube channel, and that takes having money and flexibility. And so my time in being able to do this is so limited, and I am very aware of that every time the desire pops up to buy something. It forces me to choose between time and stuff. And time always wins, because all we have in life is time, and time is the most important thing. Material possessions are just not important in the grand scheme of things. So having that understanding really sink in through this experience of being unemployed has really changed my perspective on money and on time. The next thing that's changed the way I consume is when I had to clean out my childhood home last year. My parents moved and sold the home that I grew up in, so I had to go back and clean out all of my stuff. I either had to get rid of it or drive all the way back up to Portland with it. And like I already mentioned, I don't have a lot of storage. So my stuff from my childhood was a burden. It was a burden to have to go back and clean and organize and go through it all. And it was a burden to try to have to decide what to do with it. It was shocking how much stuff was in my childhood room. I'd already gone through a lot of this stuff a few years ago, but there was still so much left. So many memories, so many old toys, old craft projects, really just so much stuff. It took me a full week to go through all of my things. And just seeing it all spread out and all the stuff that I had accumulated over my lifetime, it really sunk in how much stuff I had and how much of it I did not need. I wasn't even one of those kids who had a lot of toys growing up. I had just a select few nice toys, but it was still a lot. If you've ever heard of Swedish death cleaning, then this was kind of like the equivalent of that, but it was just my stuff in my parents' home. So I can only imagine for older people who have lived in their homes for 40, 50 years and the amount of stuff that they have accumulated. Because what I was going through was only 18 years worth of stuff, and it was still really overwhelming. So again, overconsumption is a burden. Having too much stuff costs you time and energy and decision fatigue and mental clutter and physical clutter. And having that whole experience of cleaning out my childhood home really made that sink in. The next thing that's changed the way I consume is moving. I've moved a lot in my life, just between different apartments, but in the past few years, I made the move from California to Portland. It took me about 13 hours, I want to say, to drive all the way up to Portland. And not only were we moving ourselves, but we were moving all of our stuff, all of our pets, all of our plants, all of our books. Oh my God, the books, you guys. If you've ever moved with books, then you know how heavy they are. You are literally moving trees. They are so heavy, and we made the mistake of putting these books in big boxes, and then we weren't able to carry the boxes. And most of these books are my partner's books. I would not choose to have this many because having this many books is a burden. There are libraries, you guys. Public libraries are a great resource, and we should always be supporting our public libraries. They're so important for communities, but they're also important so that we don't have to be hoarding this many books in our homes. But every time I've moved, I've had to really take stock of what I own, and I've had to pare down because moving stuff is a burden. And if you don't want to move it yourself, or if you don't have a large enough car to move it yourself or a friend to help, then you are paying money to move that stuff. So moving is a burden both physically and financially. And the more stuff you have, the more of a burden it is. Every time I've moved, there have been items in the back of a closet that I didn't know existed. And at one point in time, I was moving every single year into a different apartment. And every time I would have this experience of discovering stuff that I had forgotten about. We accumulate stuff so quickly that it's hard to even know how much we have until we're faced with it when we move. If you've ever packed up a kitchen to move, you know how shocking it is how many kitchen gadgets and pots and pans and even stuff from the pantry, how much space all of that takes up. It is multiple boxes of stuff. Stuff that you have to carry and physically move and then unpack, and it is just so much work. So every time I've moved, I've really been faced with how much stuff I actually own. And every single time, it is shocking. And every time, I just want to do a huge purge because having stuff is a burden. And then finally, the 11th thing on this list that has changed the way I consume is winning a skincare giveaway. I won a skincare giveaway on Instagram a few years ago, and I was so excited. I was so excited to receive a box full of stuff. This giveaway had Glow Recipe, it had Cocoa Kind, it had face masks and nail polish. It had everything that I could want. And I was so excited to receive it. But then after I received it, the reality sunk in of having more stuff than what I could realistically use. So often we see these huge PR hauls on TikTok and Instagram where people receive multiple packages and boxes of stuff free from brands as PR. And a lot of times these big PR hauls are really glorified on social media. These are seen as aspirational goals to a lot of people. And I also saw this as aspirational until I received this giveaway. And while it was fun to try out new products that I probably wouldn't have purchased myself, I quickly realized that my skin did not like it when I tried out a lot of different products all at once. So then I decided to just work my way through one at a time. And it was then that I realized having too much skincare is a burden. Not only was my skin not super happy trying out multiple items at once, but I had to store all of this stuff somewhere. And again, I've been living in small apartments for several years now, and since I wasn't able to use up this stuff quickly, it sat in my bathroom cupboard for at least 3 years before I was able to work my way through everything or give it to someone else. I feel like influencers really show the positive side to receiving all of these items for free, but I don't think we see the negative side of overconsumption as much. And that is the reality of the situation. When you have that much stuff, you have to have a place to store it, you have to be able to use it all, you're having stuff that is expiring before you can use it, or you have to find a way to rehome it to somebody who wants it. Otherwise, it's ending up in the landfill. But a lot of these influencers are making money from receiving products and then creating content around these products. And a lot of times these influencers have aspirations to get a paid collaboration with these brands. So obviously when they're doing these huge PR hauls, they're not going to talk negatively about any of the stuff that they're receiving. It would be like biting the hand that feeds you. It just wouldn't be a smart move if your goal is to make money through these paid collaborations. And if you're making money through affiliate links. You want to be only saying positive things about products. Otherwise, it'll hurt you financially. So that's why I don't think we hear the negative side as much of these huge PR hauls, because there is incentive to only show the positive. But when I won this skincare giveaway, I can tell you that it was a burden. I was excited and I was grateful and I enjoyed using a lot of the products, but ultimately owning more than what you can use is a burden. Overconsumption is a burden. So that's my list of 11 things that have changed the way I consume. It is still an ongoing process for me. I am far from perfect. I am working on becoming more sustainable and changing the way I consume in other ways. So I'm always a work in progress, but let me know if there's anything that has changed the way that you consume. Have you experienced any of the things that I experienced, and what was your reaction to it? Is there anything that you're trying to get better at when it comes to overconsumption? And what are some tips that you can give me to be a more mindful consumer? Please share them down below, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!